Hello, hello, hello. And oh, let me turn that off. I forgot I was trying some new things tonight. That's an overlay I was using, and you'll see why in a little bit. But hello, welcome to the live stream. I'm glad you have made it. I made it. Everybody's here. We're about to have a co-create an experience, and I'm excited for that. Um, and I'm also excited because tonight's episode is the first episode where I have a sponsor. So I want to talk about Mind Dog TV. Mind Dog, Matt Napo, is a friend of mine who does an amazing job with a podcast called Coffee with the Dog in the morning, and then he has a TV show at night called Mind Dog TV, I believe it is. And he's just an amazing, amazing podcaster and an inspiration to me. And I was talking to him about, hey, I've been doing this show. It's a hobby. He had me on as a guest, and he's helping me kind of raise the level. And he said, I'm going to help you get some sponsors. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to be your first sponsor. And so tonight's episode is sponsored by Mind Dog TV. I'm going to put up his banner here for just a minute and give homage to Matt Napo for being the live stream of consciousness's first sponsor. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And I also want to say hello to everybody who's out there. What's up, Jilly B? It's good to see you out there as always. I just want to say thank you to everybody for always being here. It's amazing to have built up this thing, whatever it might be, just my happy place and your happy place, Jill. I know you've told me that as well. And be here and have some amazing conversations with amazing people. My friendship with Jesse Blaze at the beginning was just such a cool dynamic to start the show with. Him and I were like co-hosting the show, and it was so much fun. And then, he's kind of been busy out on the West Coast, so he kind of said, hey, take it over. And I have, and it's been amazing. And I've been talking to so many people that I don't know. Started off with a lot of people that I do know, and kind of was excited to bring their stories forward. But now it's people I don't know, like tonight's guest, who is an integrated mental health therapist provider. And it's very interesting because she kind of combines what we talk about here all the time, spirituality, with some traditional medical and psychiatric and psychological education. So I'm excited to have the conversation with her, and I want to welcome her to the live stream of consciousness. Welcome, Lynn Polizzi. Hey.
Hello. Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you are so welcome. I'm super excited. You were recommended by Carrie Ann to come on the show, who has been doing the booking and introducing me to some totally amazing people. We had Kelly Talixon on the show, and I did a session with her, and she's amazing. And she's also helping me out with the show, and it's just been so cool. The show has really started to grow. So thank you for being here and being a part of this collective experience. It's going to be exciting. I'm so excited to bring this stuff out to public and not. It's interesting. I was watching before the show. I have this strange addiction with these police videos, and not like watching the police and going, oh my God, the police are so bad, but like watching what do they call themselves? Oh my God, the people who, I can't believe the word just like flew out of my head. Not the adjusters, the people who watch the police and make sure they're doing the right thing. And they're really antagonizing the police by like videoing in public, and people are asking them to stop, and they're like, well, it's my right. And my thoughts are, listen, I understand you're standing up for our rights, and I appreciate that. But if somebody says it's bothering them, it's just human. It's like integrity and respect to just say, okay, that's cool. I don't need to do this just because I have the right to do it, and I want to prove that I have the right to do it, which is basically what they're saying back. So anyway, I don't mean to bring that up because that's all negative stuff. So it's interesting that I have this weird fetish watching that stuff, and like Russell Brand, who gets all upset about the state of the world, and then I just like to bring amazing stories and amazing people and have these amazing energy exchanges. So I let it out. See, it had built up inside of me before the show, and I let it out.
Well, I appreciate my dad was a cop, so I appreciate you even saying that. And
oh yeah, no, listen, I mean, people have to respect each other. That's the whole
that's
thing.
right.
It's
That's right.
everybody's a part of it. I'm not saying there aren't bad cops, but I'm not saying,
There are. There's bad
there's bad
everything.
everything, right? Exactly. So, you got to be accountable for yourself and stop worrying what everyone else is doing. You know what I
That's
mean?
right.
That's my opinion. But anyway, welcome to the show. I told you before in the pre-show that there was a couple of questions that we ask everybody,
Mhm.
and so I'm going to ask you the first question, and that is just kind of like, it is a spiritual based question, and it is, what is consciousness? What does that mean to you? What is consciousness?
Oh, I heard you ask that. So, I was looking at some of your stuff and I'm like, oh, he's going to ask me that now. I know he is. And I am like thinking about it, going, what is consciousness? Consciousness, I was trying to like figure that out myself. I think for me personally, consciousness feels like a collective experience, and it feels like something at the seat of the soul that binds us all together collectively, in a very pure way, in a very unadulterated, and a very just a very loving, kind way. I mean, that's the best way I could describe it.
Okay,
It's pure, just purely love and
that's a great way to
connect.
describe it. It's a great way to describe it. What's so great about that question is that everybody has kind of a different answer, but they're also related to, the same answer. And some people talk about it as a collective, like you did. It's this collective feeling of love. That's kind of a good basic way to explain it. I think that's a good way. But it's just great to collect these answers, and that was great. That's perfect. I love it. And I'm glad it made you think about it for a second. What is consciousness, right? Such a great question.
Yeah, it is a big one. And I'm sure later I'll be, man, God, I should have said that too. But for
You
me,
know what?
spontaneous is probably the best way to come up
We've
with.
got an hour to talk about it. So some of the guests are saying hello. We say, "Hey, sunshine, what's happening?" We've got Sarah out there saying hello. We've got Lily saying welcome. Jilly saying welcome. Awesome. Jilly saying antagonizers. I guess she's talking about stuff I was talking about when I was preventing our conversation.
Yeah, antagonizers, that's what it's called.
And
Absolutely.
oh, look, Kelly's there. Hey, Kelly, what's happening? I gave you
Hi,
a plug.
Kelly.
If you didn't see, I gave you a little bit of a plug. Oh, nice.
Her book's on my desk.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool. So, all right. So you passed the initial question. I hope you're not so nervous anymore. You did great.
Okay.
But the next question is, before we get to kind of you and who you are and what you do, because I do want to find out what made you decide to mix approaches, with
Mm.
what you do, with kind of like the traditional medical, I want to say, approach, or textbook approach, I guess would be a better way to describe it, and then the spiritual way. And that is what, oh, Christine is saying hello also, is what, is there a moment, or has it been your whole life that you kind of understood what the spiritual side was? Like, was there a moment you said, oh, there's more to all this than I thought?
There are a lot of moments that, it's so funny. That's exactly what my book is about. Um,
Okay.
the title right now is An Intuit's Life of Miraculous Coincidences. And it's a timeline of all these incredible things that have happened to me that are just inexplainable. I mean, there's just no other explanation than divine intervention.
Do I love it? You just
Um,
kind of made me so happy just describing that whole
oh my God, it's like
thing.
incredible. I mean, I can tell you a couple of little stories if you want to.
Yeah, yeah, we'll definitely have time to do that. But I want to hear like the moments that you remember, like you're like you were different. Like a moment you were like, one moment you were one way, and the next moment you were a complete other way that you couldn't go back to the original way. You know what I mean?
I think for me, I think one of the biggest moments was when I was 13, and I had a really rough childhood. My dad was mentally ill. He was a cop, and he had a nervous breakdown, and it was something we weren't allowed to talk about. And he sadly was from an abusive home, so that was his legacy to us. He was extraordinarily physically abusive, emotionally abusive, and then my mom was working nights, and they had my sister, who's 11 years younger, and deposited her with me basically, and I was raising her and taking care of her. And when I was 13, 3 of my grandparents had died in 1 year. 2 of them lived with us. And they were the 2 grandparents that were living with us were taking care of and helping my mom with my sister. And then the third one that passed away was my everything. I loved her so much. It was my father's mother. And was a couple of things that had happened. When she came to my house for my sister's born on my birthday, so we shared the same birthday. And my grandmother came to our home, and with my grandfather, who was not the nicest of individuals, and I was really afraid of him. And he was like Italian,
That was
longshoreman.
your dad's dad. Your dad's dad.
Yeah, my dad's dad. So his legacy, was
Right. Right.
just a legacy of just abuse.
Yep.
And they had come over, and my grandmother brought me money. The year before, she gave me a doll, and I was like, I don't play with dolls. So after that, she gave up on the dolls because I broke her heart, and she gave me money, and she gave my sister a doll or like something. I don't even remember. And then as she was leaving, she handed me a bank. Like, my grandfather went out in the car, and she lingered back, and she handed me this bank that was like a little yield sign, and it was heavy and filled with money. And I literally think she had it stuffed in her bosom. She had big, 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 enormous breasts. She was this big Lithuanian. She was just my pillow. I loved her.
Right.
And she hands me this bank, and then she hands me more cash. And she's like, don't tell your grandfather, I don't want him to get mad at me. And she gave that to me. And I remember going up to my mom later that night, and I was so upset. I'm like, she's like, what's the matter? She worked nights, so I remember leaning against her door on the bathroom, and I was like, there's something wrong, And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, I don't feel right. She's like, why? I'm like, Grandma gave me all this stuff, and I'm feeling so much pain right now. And I just busted out in tears. She's like, why are you so sad? Grandma, she loves you. She always said you're your favorite and all this stuff. She's like, don't worry. It's okay. It's okay. And that was December. It was the day after my birthday because they couldn't get there until the 2nd. And then on December 9th, she passed away. So I knew I had, at that point, I knew intuitively there was something really wrong. And
Like
I could sense it.
she knew too, it almost seems.
Yeah, she was saying goodbye. She was saying goodbye. So that really profoundly affected me. And then later that year, I think just from all the loss and all the pain, I had gone to a friend's house, and I never drank alcohol until that night. Maybe I had a beer. I was like a really juvenile delinquent kid, but they had gin at this house, and there were older teens there, and I wound up drinking almost the entire quart of gin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I went into alcohol toxicity, and I was basically dying on the floor in convulsions. I was dying. I mean, I was literally choking on my tongue and my vomit. I'm sorry to be so graphic, but
No, that's
it, yeah. And it was like, and they were scared because the father lied and said he was going to be there to my mom, and he wasn't. He was going away, but my friend wanted me there, and it was going to be a big problem for them.
Wow.
And what had happened was there was a EMT that was a friend of the older brother. And I found all this out the next day when I woke up. But when I had woken up, he was sitting on the bed, and he would had his head in his hands, and he was like, you just don't understand what happened last night. And I'm like, what happened? I'm like, my head is pounding. I don't remember anything. I could smell vomit. I'm like, where am I? Like, what happened? And he tells me the story that he was driving home, and he was going by his friend's house because I was on his way home. And he literally heard in his head, you have to stop. You have to stop right now. And he was like, I couldn't believe it. He's like, I literally heard in my head that I needed to stop. I wasn't supposed to go there. And he said, I came into the house, walked into the house, and I found you with everybody standing around you, scared and not knowing what to do. And I basically saved your life. I held your tongue down. I helped you through your convulsions. They refused to call an ambulance, so I basically saved your life. And I can't even explain to you why I came in that night because I wasn't supposed to be there. And
So
he was
so go ahead,
dumbfounded.
continue. Yeah, hold on. I don't want to ruin your train of thought, but one of your friends is saying hello. I didn't want to leave her sitting there in the dust. But hello, welcome.
My
Thank you for coming.
love.
Yes, this is amazing. This is so. I'm just going to recap now because I'm kind of going in a million directions. Um, he came in at the right moment. I'm feeling like, was it you that reached out to him and told him to come, or was it your grandmother or something like that?
I think it was, yeah, like my grandmother or some divine
It was the
intervention.
same night, right? You're saying?
What's that?
Was this the same night that she had passed? Oh, this was later on.
This was probably a couple of months later
Okay.
after she had passed.
Okay. You it
And
was you coping with it. Yeah.
what's that?
It was you kind of trying to cope with it, and you were out drinking
That's
before.
right. Or not being able to cope with it really because
Right,
it was
right,
so
right.
much loss and so much grief. And, I was really having a hard time. And I really think it was divine intervention. I think that
Oh, yeah.
whoever my guides are angelically, I mean, he was even, I think it was more his reaction that was like the funniest thing because
Sure.
he just kept saying, I don't understand, I don't understand. Like he looked like he saw a ghost. It was the weirdest thing. And
Did you
he
ever think that? Because what I heard when I was listening to the story was I felt like somehow you reached out psychically to him. Like,
I never even thought of it
yeah,
until
yeah,
you said that. I
that's what I felt.
never thought of that.
Yeah.
You know what? Possibly because
Anyway,
I
continue. Yeah, I don't mean to stop the story. It's fascinating, amazing.
no, I mean that's really it. And I think for me as a child, reflecting back now, I mean, I have the hindsight of an adult. Back then, I knew something happened,
Right, right,
and it was after what happened with my grandmother,
right.
and it really opened my eyes. I think after that,
Yeah,
and
makes sense now. Yeah.
yeah, and my mom is super psychic, and it runs in my family. So we have a legacy of that. So I think I was already more open to that than most people would be. So I
Sure.
knew something was going on, you
Right.
know.
Okay, but you ended up so you experienced some things during life, and then later made the connection that, oh, that was a moment of true spirituality. But you pursued a traditional, I guess I want to say medical, but it's not. I mean, is it considered a medical career? I guess it is a
Yeah, I mean,
medical field,
clinical,
right?
yeah, a
Yeah,
clinical degree,
clinical, right, right.
yeah.
So talk
Um,
about that and what you did for a while until you decide, or did you mix it from the beginning?
no, I did not. In fact, I had become a social worker. I was in school, and my dad had passed away, and that was a whole set of miraculous coincidences too, if you will. And but I stayed on the trajectory, and I did the clinical work, and then I left. I became so poor and I think a little disillusioned because I went to Columbia, put myself through NYU, put myself through Columbia, which was in itself a miracle because I really was a juvenile delinquent and I was suspended from school 7 times.
Wow.
Really should have been in jail, should have died multiple times, between drugs and
Oh, wow.
reckless driving. I mean, we would play chicken with people in our cars. I look back now, Michael, and I'm just like,
Who was that?
scratch my head.
Right. You know what? And that's just more evidence to you that people can change. So it probably helps you be more unconditionally loving to people, to be like, oh, you know what? You're just not in the right spot. You're
That's
just,
right.
it's I think it's wisdom, really, to see it all that way.
It is wisdom. And it also cultivates eternal optimism because I feel like if I can change, anybody can change. If I can change the trajectory and the generational wounding that's happened in my family, and go to college, not only undergrad but grad school, and do extraordinarily well with that. I think anybody, it's possible for anybody. Um, so yeah, I did clinical work for a few years, and then I got sick and developed this really weird movement disorder, and decided that I was going to do something else, and I went into pharmaceuticals, which was a disaster. Uh, it was just like,
Tell us
I
about
don't.
that. I'm
Oh,
big into like hearing about. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I love hearing and talking about them. But I'm not saying that. But
ugh.
so what was horrible about the experience for you?
Pharmaceuticals is not for people who are highly sensitive and empathic. I'll tell you that much. That corporate environment was like working with hyenas. It was a very cutthroat environment. It was an environment where, I was actually marketing antibiotics. So I felt really torn about that ethically, because I was just increasing the rate of antibiotic resistance, especially among pediatrics, which means that if they overuse antibiotics, especially the one that I was marketing, which was like, that should have been the third choice and never the first, that it would create superbugs. And we were even warned about that. So I felt like, I had a little bit of
You heard it from the inside. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I knew it. And then we had to bribe these physicians with ridiculous trips and stethoscopes. And I just felt like, I don't know, it
Crazy
just
in the
wasn't
industry.
a
Yeah,
good
it's like right. There's so much to the industry that's not really a part of helping people and healing sick people. Which is what you would think pharmaceutical industry is about, and it's just really not. But we don't have to get into all of that stuff.
no, that's a whole
Yeah, that's
different
a
topic.
whole episode. Yeah. Um, I just want to go back to this comment Christina's saying, so powerful that you and God changed generational trauma. And that's exactly what I was thinking before you even said it as trauma, when you were talking about your dad and how abusive he was, and recognizing that he was that way because that's how he was raised, and
Right. That's right.
the generational trait of that, the nature of that whole thing. And of course, recognizing it to that degree is going to allow you to, say, hey, wait a second, I'm not going to treat my kids like that, or
That's right.
people that way. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yes, great comment. And also Kelly is saying that you're very gifted intuitive. So we're obviously going to have to talk about that, because that comes along, I'm sure, somewhere in the story of how
Oh
you
yeah.
integrated everything together, right?
Yeah. Yeah, being an empath and being in like a job like that was very difficult for me. And just to kind of just make it brief, but for you to understand that at that point in my life, I never spoke about this publicly, but I got so depressed because the guys that I was working with, these two individuals that were really trying to sabotage me and were really just out to get me. And it was very, very difficult. Like workplace bullying. It was out of
Oh
control, and
wow, yeah,
it was bad, to the
wow,
point where I wound up pretty much having a nervous breakdown, and I tried to take my own life. And
yeah,
I think for me, it was a culmination, though, of all this pain and all this anguish and all this loss and all this abuse. And I just couldn't take it anymore. So I think anything would have brought me to that point.
right.
Um, and I think it was necessary, really, in my journey and in really getting me to understand what's important and what's not, and really purging all of that out. I think when you walk around with that much pain and you don't deal with it the way you really need to deal with it, it really comes out physically. It came out for me with this weird movement disorder, um, and obviously psychologically. I mean, just getting so depressed. It was like I almost felt like I created this situation just to kind of bring me there, so I
Right.
could just get this out of me, this weight, this heaviness. And I have to say, I mean, for me, it was um, like a AD, BC after death type of thing for me, and it really brought me to where I am today. And I would say the spiritual journey happened a little bit later, though. I mean, it always was very spiritual and always very intuitive and very psychic. But after I had children and got married, met a wonderful man, and had two beautiful daughters,
Awesome.
um, the movement disorder kind of reared up again on me, and it got to the point where I was so sick I was in the hospital for a month in ICU, and it's called dopa responsive dystonia. So your whole body is contorting with muscle
Oh
spasms.
man, that's gonna be
It was unbearable. It was,
invasive, yeah, to say the least. Yeah.
oh my God. It was like they had to just sedate me around the clock. I mean, at some
Wow.
point, they have to put you in a medically induced coma. I didn't get to that point, thank God.
Wow.
But I was pretty ravaged. And this is, part of a long history. Like, a few years before that, I had a TIA, I had a hole in my heart. Like, I was just falling apart.
Right.
And I knew something was really wrong. Like, and I knew that this wasn't just physical. There was something more going on here. All
Right.
of this stuff manifesting at once, and one thing after another, after another, after another. And then getting to this point where I'm in the hospital for a month, I really was in bed for a year. I mean, I would
Wow.
get up, crawl out, get my kids to school with a little walker or a cane, or I was a disaster.
Wow. Yeah.
And yeah, it was a long
Can
process.
I ask you a question? And if I'm getting too personal, you can let me know. But you said you attempted suicide
Yep.
at one point.
Yeah.
So did I mean, I'm not asking how you attempted suicide, but did you have like an out of body experience or something, or didn't even get to that point, like a near death experience,
No,
or
you know what? Thank God. I mean, I don't remember anything about it.
okay,
I know that they had me in a medical unit for 3 days because I was on the cusp. I have low blood pressure to begin with. I'm like 90/60, so it doesn't take much.
right,
And then when you take, like 26 Clonopin, you're gonna be in big trouble. And
okay,
I was in big trouble. But
okay,
they just monitored me and had me, just hooked up to things, and
right.
I got through it. Um, but yeah, it was that was
I'm glad you did.
I am too.
And here to
I,
tell the story. So uh, we do have a question from Jilly. She says, definite, oh, not a question, definite emotional component to physical trauma. Yeah, yeah, of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. I thought she was asking us to define it, but I read it wrong. Yeah. Okay. So amazing. Continue. I'm sorry if I interrupted.
No,
I
no.
want to get involved. I want to know. It's really a fantastic story, especially knowing that it comes out with where we're at now. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was a long journey to get to where I got. And I have to say that year of being in bed was not an illumination in the beginning. It was really dark and it was really lonely, but it really made me think that um, I remember I had an epiphany one day because I was constantly in the hospital. I mean, I had multiple hospitalizations, was constantly in, and I had this epiphany. I was like, my whole identity was being a patient and being sick. And I was buying into that. And I was like, oh my God, like, I can't buy into this. Like, this is not who I am. I'm
Mindset,
strong.
right?
I'm a fighter, like I can't allow this to be my definition. I just refused.
Your mindset. That was your mindset.
Oh my God. But I was really falling into it. And I think that's something people have to really realize. We'll talk about that too, is to not give into that, to not become, the professional
Definition.
patient. And that's what I was
Right.
becoming.
Right.
And I was getting needs met that way. And listen, what happened to me was real. I am on Parkinson's medication 4 times a day on a bad day, 3 times a day on a good day. I still have health issues, but I am 1000% from where I was. And I do believe that all that trauma caused a lot of problems in my brain. And I think that um, all that stress, like I started to realize that I was killing myself with stress, my thoughts. I was living I was addicted, um, Joe Dispenza talks about this, Dr. Joe, like addicted to a chronic life of struggle. And I was creating that one way or another. I was creating that. And I paid for it. I paid for it dearly.
Sure.
So through that year, I really started to look at alternative things. And when you're desperate and you don't know really what's wrong with you at first, and you go in the Mayo Clinic and you're going to a mitochondrial specialist in Georgia, and you're seeing every neurologist on God's green earth, and they're all going, I, we don't know really.
Right.
Parkinson's mutation and dopa response. Like everybody had a different answer. And then I would have like a positive DAT scan that said I had Parkinson's. And 2 years later, it was negative. And we can talk about that too. But
It's overwhelming.
with all of
Sure,
that craziness, you know, and it was like, I have to do something here. I've got to take control because this isn't working. So I really had to do some really intense soul searching and, you know, asking myself, you know, how much of this have I kind of created? I'm the co-creator, I think, of a lot of this, right? And how much of this is a response to, you know, years and years of trauma? And how much of this is also me getting my needs met now because I didn't know how to do that because I was always in survival mode.
Right.
So I had no clue how to do that. But my body was going to do it. Well, if I can't ask for help, my body was going to shut down and make sure then that I got the help that I needed.
Right.
So it was, that was 2015. So here we are like 7 years later and through that journey. And, you know, I had one doctor say to me he was a total dope. He was a dope. He was a dummy and he didn't understand what I had, but he did say one thing to me, and I'm going to mention him in my book because it was transformational. He said to me, you need a spiritual advisor. I hated this guy because he totally misunderstood what's going on with me.
Right.
But when he said that, that stayed in the back of my head. And I was like, okay, maybe he is right.
You know what? It sounded like to me, like listening to that story, you were talking about all of these external forces, right?
Yeah.
That kind of created the situation. And when you actually looked inside was when you said, oh, wait a second. That sounds like a revelation there. Like,
yes.
That moment. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I didn't want to admit that. You know what I mean? I didn't want any culpability in this disease process because then people think you're, you know, it's like conversion disorder. And that was all dismissed. But I didn't want to be I didn't want to be part of this. I'm like, how could I have done this to myself? You know, or how could trauma do this? And then I realized it was also diet. Like, people don't understand like how badly sugar and gluten are in terms of inflammation and causing all these neurological diseases, also causing mental illness.
Sure. Yeah, there's a physiological aspect to it all. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I went on my journey and I found spiritual advisors and I met a shaman and she made me so angry. I have to tell you, I swear. Michael, I went to see her and I'm so sick. And she was wonderful and loving and amazing. But she's like, all your guides are telling me all around you that it's diet. This is all your diet. I'm like, what do you mean it's my diet? You know, I was so angry. I was like, there's no way you could be this sick from your diet. There's just no way in hell. But it really was compounding things. I think it was probably 50-50. I think it was trauma, and I think it was my diet, and a combination of that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, Your Body Keeps the Score. That's a great book. I highly recommend that to people.
Your Body Keeps the Score. Oh, speaking of books, I do want to talk about your book, but I also want to put up your brand here. So if people want to get in touch with you or know more about you, you were saying your website is kind of under construction, but there's your
I moved, so I had to change the whole.
Yeah, there's your email address. So if anybody is resonating right now with Lynn, that's how you can get in touch with her. It'll be there the whole show. So go on with your story. I'm sorry.
So I met her and she told me it was diet, and I was still like, there's no way in hell this is just diet. And but finally, you know, after going through some more stuff with my health, I said, I've got to take control. And I joined a rock steady boxing class, which is for people with Parkinson's, or Parkinsonianism is what I have. Non-traditional Parkinson's, secondary is something else. And I completely cut gluten out of my life. And I really believe the gluten is a big problem and a neurotoxic issue for many, many people. And I started to flourish. And I went from having a positive DAT scan that showed dopamine loss in my brain to 2.5 years later having a completely negative DAT scan.
Wow.
So
That's great. Yeah, I've heard that a lot. Like people who have, specifically reacted that way and have cut it out of their life, and it's made such a difference. And I agree. It's not like everybody has to cut it out of their life, but it certainly affects a majority of people. And
I think it does.
there's
Anyone with inflammation, like any inflammatory disorder, you really should not be eating gluten at all.
right.
Zero. So for me, it was like this whole journey getting here and trying to say, like, to myself, like, how can I make the largest impact on people with all that I've learned and my experiences? How can I kind of meld them together with my clinical work? And that's when I met Kelly and Talixin, and I'm certified in hypnotherapy because I love hypnotherapy, and I think that it's so much easier than like 5 years of therapy. You can kind of figure these things out very quickly and get to the heart of the matter and do really great work. I also got the certification in integrated mental health, which is using nutrition, using exercise, using CBD, which I also sell. It's also using anything holistic to help you with any mental health issues that you can
Okay. And I
possibly use.
think you also mentioned some IETs, right? Some integrated energy
I do integrated
therapy.
energy therapy as well, which is
So
basically, I call it
where does
like
that fit in?
angelic Reiki. Basically, that's what it is. It's just
Okay.
laying your hands on people in certain spots and just trying to intuitively tap into those areas and really calling in whoever's around them, their guides spiritually, their angels, and kind of asking them to help detoxify them in a way and pull these things out of them. And
That's
that's
you
what
know what yeah, that's interesting because you're kind of making me think of my session with Kelly. Um, while you're doing the physical, like touching someone's shoulders and connecting with them, you're also having kind of like a therapy session with them. So you're talking to them about some specific things that might bring up emotions. So they're feeling the emotions and they're feeling you connected to them while they're experiencing those emotions. So I'm sure there's a energetic connection there for you being an empath. That's I mean, I know when I'm very empathic too. So if I'm close to someone who's just got that right energy and they're experiencing something like that, I mean, I'm in tears immediately and I'm going through that. Yeah. So I totally relate to that. But that's interesting that it's and I knew there was a reason that I would find this conversation interesting because I find therapy in general interesting, and I think with the session that I did with Kelly, I felt like it was almost more psychological than metaphysical.
yes.
You know what I mean? There was like, I mean, and I've had experiences that I'm like, no, that was another realm. That was metaphysical, and only a couple. It's very rare. Kelly said I was hard to get into that zone, and we had an amazing session, by the way, and I talked about that last week. I certainly had an emotional response. I certainly felt, something. I felt the energy exchange that was intended. You know what I mean? So that was what was important. I'm grateful for the experience. But yeah, I think that was when I guess that was my first experience, even realizing there was a psychological aspect to uh, the emotional spiritual connection, right? Because for me, emotional response is a very spiritual thing. It's It's and I've said this before, and I'll say it to you too. It's thoughts actually manifesting in the physical realm like instantly. So you're having a thought in your head, let's say of your dead father, right? And it makes you feel a certain way, and you're crying, which is like your throat is all choked up, your tears are
Hmm.
coming out of your eyes. So there's physical manifestation of those thoughts. So that's like pure soul touching moment, right?
That's
So
right.
that's why I feel like emotions are important that way. So
I'm glad you brought that up though, because that, Dr. Joe, do you follow Joe Dispenza?
I I've heard some of his stuff. I don't really religiously follow anyone. I did for a while. I followed like Russell Brand. I followed religiously, and he just became
Yeah,
too intense for me. It was just like I was like, all right, I love what he says, but his energy is appealing to the people that need that intensity, and they need to feel that kind of anger, and like get worked up and be like, yeah, we're gonna do something about it. Like, not that I don't want to do anything about it, but that's not my place right now. My place is to vibe with people who are already know that love is the answer.
love is the answer. That's right. Love is the answer. Funny you say that. Christine's on, my friend Christine, and I'm part of, on her board for her Love Box Foundation, and that's all she's about. She rewrite love notes to people, and that's what we do in this
Wow,
foundation. And you should have her on one night.
that's
But
awesome. Yeah, definitely. Well, I'll get her information from you after the show.
yeah,
But
that's tradition, spreading
that's
love.
amazing. Yes, I got to say something the universe has told me lately in a couple of ways, and this is a good message for the viewers of the live stream, is to take notice of how important it is how you make other people feel about themselves, because there's such, if you want to talk about things that are abstract, like it's better to give than receive, and you get so much more when you give. That's the kind of thing they're talking about. When you make someone feel good about themselves, you get that you feel good about yourself just for making them feel good about themselves. You know what I mean? So automatically it's a reciprocation of energy. It's an energy exchange. That's a good one. So that's awesome.
I love that. I love that. It's beautiful, and that's what I love about my work. I feel it's very sacred, and people come to me, really during their darkest times, and intuitively, I feel like I guide them. I know things before they even tell me. It's a little unfair, and I hate to say it, but I do. I just know. I have knowing, and I'm usually always right. But it does allow me to do work with people. I think, not just authentically, but quickly. We really get to the heart of the matter quickly. And being an empath, you have to be a little careful about that too, though, in this field, because as you know, you're a sponge. You're a sponge. So anybody who's an empath, really, really important that you protect yourself, you ground yourself, you take care of yourself. Self-care is so critical for
Right.
anybody who's an
So,
empath.
do you, and everybody does it differently. Do you have like a ritual that like protects yourself before bringing in spirit, let's say, or you just, or like you just said, see, and that's what I think my method is I'm in self love. I'm in like I know I love myself. I know if something doesn't feel right, I don't. I mean, I don't know everything, and there may be entities that can make me feel like they feel right. I've certainly misjudged people, who I thought were good and ended up kind of not being so good. And I'm like, oh man, I really thought you had a good vibe. And you don't.
It's that
But
optimism.
see you later. Yeah, maybe it's an optimism thing. I don't know. But it's I think it's certainly intriguing to me again to have the conversation, because I can see how being intuitive and being empathic would mix with kind of being a therapist and trying to help someone understand things, and they're almost looking for a traditional solution, not necessarily, oh, I don't want to go any hoochie coochie routes, or I don't believe in all of that stuff, but you're able to really mix that together, because you have that traditional background. Carrie Ann's here. She's saying hello. What's up?
Hi, Carrie Ann.
Good
I
to see
think for
you.
me at this point, I just, of course, I mean, then there's people who just want the clinical stuff, and that's fine. But I feel like for the most part, most people want to go there. They want to explore it. They want to have a bigger understanding of something that's just beyond them.
Yeah.
That something, kind of communing with the universe, almost like really kind of digging deep into
Sure.
the energy, and people love it. People love hearing about this stuff. They
Sure.
love if I, you know, if I want to break up a session a little bit, I'm like, oh, I have angel cards. You want to see, like, just for fun? And they're like, ooh, I
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
that. And
It is really, it's really kind of, I guess it is kind of fun to be on the understanding side of it all and be able to share it with people who aren't as understanding of it. Let's That's an easy way to put it, right? As far as like awareness and awake and all this stuff, it's just people. Some people understand it, some people don't. And I think what's kind of cool is when you can talk to people and you can be like, oh yeah, did you see Star Wars? You know, the Force. You know, they're that's what they're talking about. You know what I mean? And they're just like, oh my god, wow. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's so simple. It's just like, you know, it is so simple. But again, that's what I think is really cool. And you know, I almost wish that I have, you know, if, like I said, I've had a few moments in my life where I have experienced what I would call, you know, crossing over to a different realm, whatever that might be, whether it be the other side or an other side. I like to say an other side, right? There's not just one other side, right?
yeah,
So, you know, or another dimension. I have had some crazy experiences, which I would attribute to that, you know, but I haven't really had the need to or uncovered any sort of certain uncanny spiritual gift. Like I'm not a psychic medium. I haven't had anybody say, hey, look at that person, I'm their grandmother, I have to go tell them this. You know, I haven't. And maybe it's because I expect that's how it's going to happen, and I have expectations of how it should happen, so it just doesn't happen. But I'm okay with that because I feel like the live stream of consciousness is my gift. You know,
that's right. That's right.
it's just my way to uh, meet and expand my own consciousness and let other people witness that happening and be a part of it and expand their own consciousness at the same time. You know, part of my gift to the collective, I guess you could say.
I love that. I love that. I think you're, onto something. Like if everybody, everyone will say, a lot of people will say like, "Oh, how do you do that? How do you know these things?" Like, but I think everybody has the capacity. I think as we evolve as human beings, we're going to become more and more telepathic and psychic. And I think everybody has the capacity. Everyone does it in different ways. Like I'm very, very steeped in the spiritual community, and all of our gifts are so different. There's
Yeah,
no one,
absolutely.
no one has the same. We're all snowflakes. Everybody's different. Everybody has the way they manifest their gifts is so different.
Right. Right. I just heard that analogy the other day, and it made so much sense because we're all snowflakes and we're all different, yes, but we're all a part of the whole, right? We're all a
That's right.
part of the snowstorm, right? We're all a part of that, and it's
That's right.
just such a beautiful analogy. I usually talk about like a drop in the ocean. You know, you can take a drop out of the ocean, but it's still a part of the ocean, and when it's back in the ocean, it's flowing. You know what I mean? So it's like that's my analogy. So why don't we talk about what you got going now, since we've kind of covered, you know, your traditional background, how you started spirituality, but I heard, and you told me also that you're working on a book, or it's about to come out, or where are you at with that? And
Yeah, I am working with a coach. I'm almost done. My undergrad was in creative writing, and I've done, quite a bit of writing for the Mighty, and which is a chronic illness organization, and had some stuff published in Yahoo, and wrote for a couple of local things. But this memoir has been, I'd say, 4 years now in the making, and it's funny. When I was, I think, 20 years old, 21, and I had this man, Charles Rappaport, who I work for in this law firm, and he really put up with a lot of nonsense from me, and helped me get into the Renfrew Center and eating disorder clinic.
wow,
And he helped me so much. He was like a father I never had. But I'll never forget, he said to me, I think I was 21 when he said it, "I can't wait to be walking with my grandchild and see your book, your memoir, in the window of Barnes and Nobles." And I'm going to say, I know that girl. And that always stayed with me, Michael. I swear to
that's
you,
awesome.
like always
That's
stayed with
awesome.
me.
I love
So,
that. What is the name of the book again?
and into its life of miraculous coincidences.
To its life I'm not doing a search. I'm just typing it here. Miraculous coincidence. I
Coincidence.
love that, and I believe that you were talking about it before. You were saying coincidences, but you weren't. You didn't even want to say it. Coincidences, because you're like, yeah, if there is such a thing as coincidences, and it was just
Exactly. It's
about
almost like I'm
how,
being facetious, for
yeah,
people who are like, that's a coincidence. It really
right.
isn't.
I think I spelled this right. I'm gonna save this, and I'm gonna just put this on the bottom here. An intuit's life of miraculous coincidences. Is that
Yeah,
spelled right? Awesome. So I love that, and I totally believe that. I feel like my life is a combination of everything that I've ever done, everything that I've experienced is all like, oh, wait a second, that makes sense now, because now I'm doing this, or now I'm doing
that's
that.
right. That's
You
right.
know, it's all a part of the flow and the grand plan, if you want to call it that. Or I like to say the flow. I don't like to say it's a plan and feel like I don't have any say in it. I do have say in it.
You have saying it. Right. Right.
But so that's the book that's coming out, and so where are you at with this book now? It's is when do we
I,
expect it?
I probably have about 4 more chapters to write. I would say by January, hopefully. No, it will be. I'm not putting hopefully out
There you
in
go.
there in the
I love
atmosphere.
it. I love it. You
It's
you
going
you
to
get
be
it. You
published.
can't. You got to be very strict with your intention and your
Yes,
words.
it
And
will be published. I will be on the New York Times bestseller list,
awesome. I can't
and
wait to see you there. Yeah.
I can't wait for it to be made into a movie.
That's awesome. So you said it. So you said memoirs, which is basically life stories, right?
Yep,
And so I'm imagining the story that we heard is in
that's
there.
right.
Is that where it starts?
It actually starts, believe it or not, I'll quickly tell you, when I was 4 years old. And it's something happened in the apartment building I was in, and this I heard this howling, and I was so afraid, and had that knowing again, like I did with my grandma. I knew something was wrong, and my mom would always have to come down the stairs to bring me up the stairs. It was just a nightmare. And years later, I found out that the guy that I was afraid of, they presume it was him, he was mentally ill, and his mom had passed away, and he had turned the gas on and blew up the whole building.
Oh my God.
I found out by going down the street, revisiting it with a old boyfriend at the time, and I'm walking down the street and I'm like, wait a minute, where's my address? It was the craziest thing. It was like,
That's
I say in the
insane.
book, like someone took an eraser and just like erased part of my life, and like the electrical cord kind of got clipped there. I was like, wait a minute, like there's just two rough sides of two buildings, and
That's
my building and
insane.
the building next to me were completely decimated.
Wow.
So I feel like even then I kind of had, like, just from very young, I had very strong
Crazy.
intuition.
Yeah. That's a crazy. So is that how the book opens? That's like that's the opening of the book.
Yeah, pretty much. That's where it kind of
That's
starts.
kind of
And
cool. Yeah, that's a cool opening of a book. It's almost like a Mandela effect, right? Like an instantaneous, like, okay, when I left, it was here.
exactly. It was the craziest thing. It really was
That's got
crazy.
to be a crazy, crazy experience. Wow.
So the whole book is about, well, the whole timeline is all these different miraculous coincidences that happened in my life from then up till the present day. In fact, Carrie, who is, I reference her in the book.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
yeah, there
Can we hear
was.
the Carrie
Do I
story?
have time to tell any more stories, or am
Yeah,
I?
yeah. Let's go, let's end it with the Carrie story, and then I would love to have you offer some just words of love and advice to my audience, and then we'll call it a night.
So Carrie, I met at a angel card reading class, and we were like doing readings, and she was reading me, and she said to me, "Who is Lisa?" And I'm like, "Lisa," and she goes to me, "Yeah, Lisa." And I feel this, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's Lisa Solomon," which I don't know if you know about the case on Long Island, but I grew up with Lisa. She was murdered years back by her husband. He did a chokehold on her, and he killed her and dumped her body in a field.
What was the husband's name?
Matthew Solomon.
Matthew. it does sound vaguely familiar. I know that because there was
You
somebody
don't, yeah.
my sister went to high school with who had a similar story on Long Island, like with the wife was pregnant, and he killed her or something, but it was not that story. But okay, so go ahead, Lisa Solomon.
So
So did she make this motion, or you just felt that? You
no,
said that.
she grabbed her neck. She's
Oh,
so
and you
intuitive.
felt it, and you felt it.
I knew immediately who she was talking about then because that's how
Ah,
Lisa died. She was
right,
choked.
right. Gotcha.
I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe she's bringing up Lisa. I was just thinking about her, and I wasn't going to sign the petition this year because I feel like Matthew's been in jail long enough. And I really felt Lisa was saying to me, like, I'm okay with him coming out. So I felt bad about not signing the petition. But I just didn't feel it. I didn't have it in me to keep this man in jail another year, so I
Right,
didn't sign
right.
it. The next day, I'm watching TV and he's coming up for parole all over the news again. I'm like, oh my God, like this is crazy. That the next day she brings up Lisa and he's coming up for parole
Coincidence? Right.
and it's on TV. So I talk about that and I talk about because I really felt her using me, like in a way, and that I added a chapter of in the book about basically how I kind of channeled her in a way, like her words to her mom, that it was time, for her to disconnect. She didn't have to forgive him, but she had to disconnect from
Right,
all
right.
that.
And I'm sure you talked about this with Carrie, but Carrie saying that's what she was saying to let him go on. And
Yes,
I, you know what? Honestly, maybe I am intuitive because that's what I was feeling when you were talking about it. I was like, you were ready to just let him go have a life. You know what I mean?
that's right. Let
Yeah,
him have a life, but also to let Lisa have
right,
peace
right.
because they're keeping her here through their
Yep.
anger and their sadness
Oh,
and
so wise. That's so wise. Yeah. So true. Yeah.
and now I have my hair is standing up like literally like
Right now,
woo,
awesome.
and chills throughout my body.
Nice. Yeah, it's
So
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, so that's how I met Carrie, and that's pretty much how I wrap the book up is like what happened there and
Awesome.
the grace in not having to forgive, but the grace in just kind of allowing ourselves to, like I said, like remove ourselves from those attachments and that static and all that pain that goes when someone hurts you that deeply
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
really release yourself of that because then you release if anybody is involved in that pain, you release them too.
Absolutely. Yeah, you know what I've been talking about recently, the story of a few years ago. I don't remember what the specifics were, but I had made some realizations that were like very healing, and I just want to find the calendar for a second when I get ready to go. Some things that were very healing, and there was something that I felt like I had healed between myself and my father who had passed.
Mm.
And at that same moment, I was like, I just healed my father. Like
Yeah,
my father is free
yes,
of this because I'm
that's right.
free of it. You
That's
know what
right.
I mean?
You
I
release
totally
it.
felt it. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Amazing.
right. That's beautiful.
Amazing stuff. So I would love for you to um, give us some words of wisdom, some parting advice, whatever it is you feel like you can help us with. I would love to hear some Lynn Polizzi wisdom.
Um, it's really Joe, Dr. Joe. If you have a thought, it doesn't mean it's true, and that you are really responsible for your own happiness. It's a choice. I really believe that. I know that life can be very hard and there's just horrible things that can happen, but you do have the choice really to be happy and um and you deserve that. And when I say happy, I mean more joyful, and that's another thing I really want to part with. The happiness conundrum. Happiness is a moment. Happiness is a feeling, right? Um, People think they failed because they don't feel chronically happy. They fail at like the spiritual life. They fail all this because they're not. You don't have to be chronically happy. You can't be chronically happy. If
Right.
you're chronically happy, you're dead. But you can have joy. You can have chronic joy and still feel all these different things. You can still have anger. You can still have loss. You can still have sadness. You can have all these things. But if you have this underpinning of joy, it keeps you tethered here, and it pulls you out and it doesn't close you off to more experiences, and it doesn't close you off to love. So find joy. That's my word for this year. Allow yourself to experience
I love
joy.
it. That's great advice. And you're right. I think emotions are not. There's no emotion or feeling way you feel that is mutually exclusive of any of the other emotions you may
That's
feel.
right.
You know what I mean? So, but and there is an element of choice as well. You know what I mean? And I've started to realize I don't want to sound too preachy because some people find it difficult, and it's not like if you're you're not feeling the ability to choose your response to something, you're just feeling like, no, this is happening and this is the way I'm responding. That's okay. I don't want to say no, it's a choice and you shouldn't do that. Of course you should
You
respond.
have to feel it first.
You
That's
have to
right.
feel it, right? You have to
That's
feel it.
right.
But understanding that, I think, helps to get there. You know what I mean? So just the fact that it's a choice. So Ninja Kitty says yes. I love that. I so love that. So awesome. Those are great words of wisdom. Thank you so much, Lynn, for
Thank you.
joining
Thank
me for this hour and getting to know
thank you.
me. I do appreciate it. And why don't you let me know when you're ready to release the book? We'll have you back on and we'll
Thank
promote it. Maybe we'll have you read a little chapter of it or something. And
I
we
would
can,
love that. Thank you
I,
so much.
I
It
like
was
that.
just such a great night. Thank you.
I do like that. So just hang on backstage for a second. I want to just talk about next week, and I feel weird when I'm talking about who I'm going to have next week when I've got the current guests right in front of me. So let's say good night to you, Lynn, and we will see you again soon on the show. And you just hang out in the green room until I'm done, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you.
Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.
Wow, awesome! What a great conversation. I love it. Thank you, Carrie Ann, for bringing Lynn on the show. Um, this is my happy place. I love being here. I love that you guys are here watching. I love that we're just all having a moment together. Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here and enjoying this. Um, thank you for being here. Thank you for the fast panel. Yeah, thank you for being here. This was awesome, and thank you for always being here, Ninja. Next week I have Mindy Fesenstein here, who or Stein, Fesenstein, I guess you pronounce it. Mindy Fesenstein. She's a member of, I don't know if you guys remember Sunshine from the live stream. We had Sunshine on the show. Now she's got her own show, The Ripple Effect. She's doing amazing things. So I'm so happy and proud of her. But originally, she had booked Mindy on the show, and then Jesse left, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to be doing on the show. So we are having her. So next week is Mindy Fesenstein, and I'm excited for that one too. Thank you guys so much. Let me turn this off. Let me get ready to run the outro and say what I always say, which is be kind, be good, be you. Peace.